So His Holiness is now reading from the text. So mainly Nagarjuna's commentary to Bodhicitta and Bodhisattvacharya's explanation on the shortcomings of selfishness and the benefits of cherishing others. And then one have to think on if you just think from the point of one's own welfare, then one feels like it's enough if I can attain liberation. But for all sentient beings, we must attain the state of Buddhahood. So the self-cherishing mind, as long as that mind is there in our mind, in our continuum, it will be an obstacle to our practice of cherishing others as more important. So this is my opinion. So without bodhicitta, whether one practices Guya Samaja or Heruka or Yamantaka, if we act as servants to self-cherishing mind, then there's no way one can attain Buddhahood. Also, if when one recites the sadhanas, we say, instantly I transform into Yamantaka or this and that deity. As long as the self-cherishing mind is strongly there, it's just pointless. So that's why I think the three out of the three lineages, the blessing lineage is actually something that pertains to the tantric teaching. As I generally say, there's a division: the general public teaching and individual teaching. The treatises composed by Asanga and the treatises by Nagarjuna these are the general commentaries on the Buddha's teaching, whereas the tantric teachings are what we call Kansa Gwese, means individually prescribed teachings. So, for example, so therefore the practice, so such practices like drops, channels, and wind varies from different lineage to different lineage. And that's because these teachings are individually prescribed teachings. They are not like public, sort of like a blanket teaching for everybody. So this we must. It's something. This is something very. This is a very important division or differentiation that distinction we should be able to make. No, we should understand. So otherwise, the meaning of the Tyata Gata Gata Paragata Parasamgata Buddhas, the mantra of Prajna Paramita, these its explanations are given only in the treatises of Nagarjuna Asanga. And also Nagarjuna's verses in his Madhyamika Mulakarika on saying no self, not from oneself, not from others, etc. These are all practice. These are practices for the like sort of the foundation. So Nagarjuna and his treatises are really the real lamp of the three worlds. So if we study this treatises of Nagarjuna, then so if we go into Tantra, even scholars, intellectuals, it's difficult in Tantra for as far as Tantra is concerned. But as far as Madhyamika view is concerned, when the concept of dependent arising, whoever, no matter what a person's background is, all scholars, intellectuals will appreciate and admire this. That's why today the reason why scientists and scholars admire Buddhism is because of this very reason. Because the concept of lack of inherent existence is something now the scientists themselves are also explaining. The concept of quantum physics is a scientific finding. The scientists themselves, according from the quantum scientists, is saying that there's nothing intrinsic, inherent in the universe, and this is exactly what the Madhyamika philosophy asserts. So, as at the moment, quantum physics confines its research mainly to the material objects, not on mind and mental states. My friend, the late Raja Ramanai, the Indian scientist, once during a meeting in Delhi, he was there and he told me that quantum physics is a new new scientific phenomena in today's world. There's a new finding, whereas but this knowledge has been existing in India since 2,000 years ago, and it was there in Nagarjuna's works, treatises. Because he saw a work by Nagarjuna and he found quantum physics right there. So this is really true, and so this is what it means by moving at inspiring scientists, scholars, great minds. It cannot move villagers or people, uneducated people, but it will inspire and fascinate the great minds. In Praise to Emptiness by Nagarjuna, Nagarjuna has said that emptiness has no inherent nature. The general explanation of the four fundamentals like without as impermanent suffering, empty and bliss. That is a general explanation. But the real meaning of emptiness is explained in Nagarjuna's works. As I usually always say, having seen the real meaning, which is a quotation from Lama Tsongkhapa's Praise to Emptiness, praise to the Buddha through dependent arising. So in that verse, the quotation, Tsongkhapa says that he feels great faith and inspiration, appreciation for the Buddha from the bottom of his heart and from the bone marrow because of this teaching on dependent arising and emptiness. And this, I think, is really a great seal Um, um, I used to. I also tell that a great master, somebody called Miyak something, I think from a Nyingma tradition, His Holiness said that he's a disciple of Zapadu. He studied many of Tsongkhapa's treatises, and he has a commentary on. He has a commentary on Minya. This master's name is Minya Kunsu, and Kun Lamrim told me that this Lama's commentary on Jangchup Bodhisattva Charya is an excellent commentary, and also Jum Mipam in some of his works, he has critiques against Tsongkhapa on Tsongkhapa, some of Tsongkhapa's explanation on emptiness. But the former the last incarnation of Demolochus Rinpoche and Parirapse's critique, refutation of Minya Jumipam, both didn't were not very successful to refute Jumipam. And Kun Lamrim said that, but the critique by the real answer to Jumipam's critique of Tsongkhapa was actually given by this master Minya Kunsur, in which Minya Kunsur defended Tsongkhapa, and that refutation, answer really answered Jumipam's critique, or refutation of Tsongkhapa. That is said by Kuno Lama Rinpoche to me. So I saw that text by Minya Kunsu, and it was really excellent. And it is said there that Rendawa Shunu Lodu specialized on emptiness. And from that time onwards, there's a sort of a saying or sort of a tradition, hype spread, which says, if you listen to emptiness. If you think on emptiness. If you meditate on emptiness. Like Tsongkhapa's work, like treatises like Oma Gongpo Rabse and commentary to Chandakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, and praise to Tak Dongu. These are composed by Tsongkhapa in his later part of his life, and so me too. Maybe every time I open my mouth, it is sort of more or less I'm talking about emptiness. That is because I am compelled to do so, because without emptiness, without the practice of emptiness, nothing else works. Because the only real practice that can overcome the self-grasping mind, the self-cherishing mind, is emptiness. If we can move we can overcome self-cherishing mind and self-grasping mind through the understanding of emptiness, then the parts, the graduated parts, like part of accumulation, part of preparation, part of seeing, etc., automatically starts starts realizing. bodhicitta is an unsurpassable path, but without emptiness, what can bodhicitta do? A practitioner cannot even move beyond the path of preparation without emptiness. So therefore, the students, monk students here, who the emptiness view is extremely important. So we must study the Madhyamika Mulakarika by Nagarjuna and Chandakirti's commentary on Madhyamika Mulakarika 6L is matchless, and Baba Vika's so also Buddha Palita's commentary. So so Tsongkhapa's commentary to Madhyamika Mulakarika, called Sashye Tikche Rikpe Gyatso, the ocean of knowledge. That is the sort of the overall commentary to all of these earlier works. So this is something very important. So even during Rendava's time, there was this saying I already mentioned to you before, and me too. I'm not saying I don't. The experience of emptiness is very difficult, but I don't deny that I do have some experience. So through the emptiness understanding, we can understand that cessation of suffering is a possibility. Because all afflicted emotions finally sort of trace back to originates from self-grasping mind, and then this self-grasping mind sort of boils down to our misunderstanding of the nature of phenomena, and that can be overcome only by understanding the true reality of phenomena. So when we understand this point, then we can see that truth of cessation is a possibility. So this is also the understanding of the Dharma, out of the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the meaning of Dharma can be understood through this way. So if we don't, it's not enough. If it's not enough to just learn the verbal meaning of the text, the divisions, subdivisions, the definitions, and what debates are there here and there. As long as we don't try to look inside and try to practice and try to overcome and fight self-grasping mind, then through the understanding of emptiness, nothing can change. So I think His Holiness is reading. I'll just try to read through. I don't think I will be able to catch up with His Holiness, but I will just read some passages. With these thoughts you will come to feel, may these sentient beings have every form of happiness, which is the development of love. In the perfection of wisdom, it is said that there is no end. There's no end. There's a debate on whether there is end to samsara or not. So I have some difficulty with this debate. Uh, all the same, let me read from here. All the same, we can we achieve this Buddhahood? We can, and the best physical rebirth to have for its attainment is the optimum rebirth. We have gained a very special type of physical rebirth. We were born from the womb of a human of the southern continent, and we have the 6 types of physical constituents. All we need to do is make use of this opportunity to achieve the state of Vajradhara in one lifetime. 저도 가을에 하고 있는 거. 뒤단기 못 주워드려요. 이 드네 고추 올라서. 드네. Det var det. Didisya. O tuş. Still, okay. Still, are you now able to do this? As for right now, forget all beings. You cannot work for the sake of even one sentient being. Who then can? The Bodhisattvas abiding on the pure levels and the Shravakas or Pratyek Buddhas can benefit sentient beings, but they can only do a little of what the Buddhas are capable of doing. Thus, a Buddha who is without equal in his deeds for the welfare of sentient beings is the only one. Each ray of light from the body of a Buddha is able to mature and liberate immeasurable sentient beings. Buddhas emanate bodies that appear before each sentient being. These forms are tailored to the mental disposition, sense faculties, wishes, and karmic tendencies of these beings. Buddhas can teach them the Dharma in their individual languages. These are some of the capabilities of Buddhas. If you wonder whether we can achieve the level of Buddhahood, the answer is we can. The best of all physical rebirths to have for this attainment is the optimum rebirth. We have gained a very special type of physical rebirth. We are born from the womb of a human of the southern continent, and we have the 6 types of physical constituents. We are thus able to achieve in one lifetime the state of unification of Vajradhara. Unless we do not apply ourselves, we have retained such a physical rebirth. That the means to achieve Buddhahood is the Dharma of supreme vehicle and the teaching of this. victorious one Tsongkhapa on this vehicle are completely unmistaken. His stainless teaching combined both the sutras and tantras. We have met with such teachings. In short, we are free from any unfavorable conditions except for cheating ourselves by not making effort. If now, when we have attained such an excellent foundation with all the favorable conditions, we cannot achieve Buddhahood, it is certain that in the future we will not gain any better rebirth or Dharma. Some of us might claim, now is a degenerate time, our timing has been bad. But since beginningless cycle existence, we have never experienced a time with more potential benefit for us than now. We could have no better a time than this. We shall find such a situation only once. We must therefore work toward our Buddhahood, come what may. Thus, this should lead you to feel, I shall do all I can to achieve my goal, peerless full enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. This thought someone's here His Holiness says that Tantra may be greatly powerful, but if we use Tantra to achieve temporary goals like wealth, power, etc., for this world's gain, then it's a total waste of the tantric path and tantric practices, and this is really true. I shall listen attentively to the Lamrim and then put it into practice. In general, it is vital to have one of these three motives at the beginning of any practice, especially when you listen to a discourse on the Lamrim. Just any motive is not sufficient. You must at least listen in conjunction with the force or contrived form of bodhicitta. For people who have already experienced the development of bodhicitta, it may be sufficient for them to think over a short formula such as, for the sake of all mother sentient beings. However, this is not enough to transform the mind of a beginner. If you think over the Lamrim, starting with the immense difficulty of gaining an optimal human rebirth, your mind will turn towards bodhicitta. This does not apply only to the Lamrim. When we Gelugpas attend any teaching at all, be it an initiation, oral transmission, discourse, or whatever, we should go over the whole Lamrim as a preliminary when we set our motivation. This is just sort of saying something over one of the word. It's better to say it in this way or that way. This does not apply only to the Lamrim. When we Gelugpas attend any teaching at all, be it an initiation, oral transmission, discourse, or whatever, we should go over the whole Lamrim as a preliminary. When we set our motivation, even short prayers include all of the three scopes of the Lamrim with nothing left out. My precious Guru has said time and again that this is the supreme distinguishing feature of the teachings of the Lord Kadamba, of the old Kadambas and of us new Kadambas. Those of you who will bear the responsibility of preserving these teachings must carry out your studies in this fashion. However, when giving a long life initiation, it is the practice not to speak about impermanence and death and so on, as this is an inauspicious gesture. One only speaks on the difficulty of obtaining this beneficial optimum human rebirth. Some of the people attending this teaching of the Dharma might feel, I'm truly fortunate to be studying this, but I cannot put it into practice. Others attend because they are imitating others. If you go, I will come too. No one will attend this teaching in order to make a living out of performing rituals in people's homes, but this happens with other teachings like major initiation. When you attend other teachings, initiations for example, you may think you will receive the power to subdue evil spirits by reciting the mantra and so forth, and you may think you will subdue sickness or spirits, achieve wealth, acquire power, etc. Others, no matter how many teachings they have received, treat Dharma as if it were, for example, capital to start a business. They then go to places like Mongolia to peddle the Dharma. Such people accumulate enormous grave sins through the Dharma. The Buddha, our teacher, discussed the means to achieve liberation and omniscience. To exploit such teachings for worldly ends is equal to forcing a king off his throne and making him sweep the floor. So, if you seem to have any of these above mentioned bad motives, get rid of them, summon up summon up some contrived bodhicitta and then listen. So much for the setting of your motivation. Here follows the main body of the teaching to which you are actually going to listen. First, the Dhamma you are going to practice should have been spoken by the Buddha and discussed and proven by the Indian Pandits. Your practice must be one from which the great adepts derive their insight and realization. Otherwise, an instruction could be termed profound, even if it were not something spoken by the Buddha and were unknown to the other scholar adepts. Meditate on such an instruction and you could be in danger of getting some result that no one else has ever achieved before, not even the Buddhists. You therefore must examine the Dharma you are going to make your practice. As the master Sakya Pandita says, with the pettiest business deal in horses, jewels, and so on, you question everything and examine all. I've seen how diligent you are with the petty actions of this life. The good or bad in all your future lives comes from the holy Dharma. Yet you treat the Dharma like a dog eats food. A dog eats food. You worship whatever comes along without first checking whether it is good or evil. When we buy a horse, for example, we examine numerous things, get a divination beforehand, and question lots of other people. Take the example of an ordinary monk. Even when he buys a tea brick, he checks its color, weight, and shape many times over. He makes quite sure it has not been damaged by water, etc. And he asks other people's opinions. Yet, if he is unlucky, it would only affect a few cups of tea. You investigate such things as this thoroughly, even though they have only temporary value for you, but you do not seem to investigate at all the Dharma you are to practice. Although this is the foundation of your eternal hopes for all your rebirths, you treat it like dogs does food. Whatever you chance upon is unacceptable. How very wrong that is. If you go wrong here, you have ruined your eternal hopes. Thus, you must examine the Dharma you intend to practice before you engage in it. I've already said since last year that Dalai Lama's Lamrim, Jambe Shelong, is composed in such a way that it's sort of like the essence of Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo. Penchen Losang Chögyin's Lamrim is sort of slightly a short version, and Lamrim Nyulam is also is excellent, but doesn't have the sort of that scholarly touch to that. Whereas Fifth Dalai Lama's Lamrim has that. It contains the essence of Tsongkhapa's Lamrim, but it has a scholarly touch to it. So those teachings which have instruction lineage, we can say they are instruction. They have shitty. And Yongzi Yishi Genzin's commentary on the 800 verses sutra also has a shitty sort of. It's very highly emphasized in the Lamrim Chemo by Tsongkhapa that there's a tendency that among people that there are two kinds of dharma. One which is sort of like just for knowledge, and one for practice, and that is very wrong. Like, for example, Nagarjuna's treatises are like considered like for studied for knowledge, and that is Tsongkhapa sort of highly emphasized that this is a very wrong tendency, and these are because Nagarjuna, there is no such differentiation and you know, like our usual sort of many of us sort of have this tendency to think that when you said menga or the instruction, we consider it like a great treasure, a very secret, hidden. Whereas when you say like the five scriptures, five sciences, they are like treated like sort of just for knowledge. So Tsongkhapa says that there's no such thing as a separate manga instruction apart from the five sciences of Buddhist knowledge. So therefore, when from the in the three monasteries, from the very beginning, when teachers teach the basic logic to students, from the beginning, it is important for the teachers to teach in such a way that they teach that even basic logic. Not only they should teach just the word, the definition, the textual, the literature, but also try to explain, convey the meaning which is meant to be used for overcoming practice, overcoming our delusion and subduing our mind. So if we just keep on studying Dharma and leave our mind totally untrained, that's a great disgrace. So whatever we learn should be utilized, implemented to as a tool to train our mind to practice. This is very important. All the teachers are here, and so this is something we should keep in mind. So generally, when we hear talk about the expansive view, contact lineage and profound view lineage, we treat them like sort of for something you study for knowledge, and then when we think of instruction, practice, we sort of have this tendency to think there's some other practice teaching. Apart from that, that's totally misunderstanding and wrong. So these are really the real instruction for practice. Whereas at the same time, what is called as the practice of blessing lineage, that is slightly different. That is, as I explained earlier, there are two kinds of things: general public teaching and individually prescribed teaching. So this thing called practice blessing lineage, that's something to do with sort of individual practice. Now it's time for tea. Now just relish the tea. The chanting master, if he wants to, sort of sing a very good, sort of magnificent, sort of grace, then first just take a sip of tea and make your throat moist, and then say the grace, and the voice will be magnificent. Earlier, a friend of mine who used to live somewhere nearby the border of Nepal, a great practitioner, he when he teaches his students, he just teach one section at a time, and then let the students go off and let them practice until the time the students have sort of developed certain kind of experience, and then come back. They come back, go back to him, and then he teach them the next one. This is called experiential instruction. Regarding, as for example, Miller Rebbe, he was practicing in the caves by himself, and then at times when he had particular difficulty with a certain point or some practice, then he visits his master, and then asks for clarification or some help, and then the Lama teaches him, gives him, helped him clarify that point, and then he goes back into his cave. So this is called experiential instruction. So Pawanka is saying here also he's going to teach this Lamrim in the experiential instruction format. So the text says, the teaching I shall now offer is a practical discourse. A few of those present are unfortunate enough only to have the time to attend this sort of teaching once or twice. They are interested in these teachings, although they must later go their separate ways. For their sakes, I shall be combining the swift path and the brief and the detailed lineages of Manjusharis onwards. Later on, when we get to that part, I shall give the 7-point mind training on the interchange of self and others. I have no reservations about giving this teaching. This teaching will create root merits for the two departed aristocrats in whose memory this teaching is being given. The three beings, the format of the Lamrim, which is based on the three beings, is sort of based on this particular verse by It's based on a verse from the 400 verses by Arya Deva. This verse, which, and the term "the three beings" is actually found in Asanga's treatises. And so the three beings is based on the fact that the first being and the practice of the first being emphasize on engaging in virtuous actions, and refraining from non-virtuous actions, whereas the second being, the intermediate being, emphasizes on overcoming self-grasping mind by meditating on emptiness and subduing the afflictive emotions. And the third being emphasizes on the great path, the 6 perfections, to attain the state of Buddhahood. So this is a 3-step sort of way of training and leading a disciple from an ordinary state up to the state of Buddhahood. So this there's not much difference between the Sakyapa's way of teaching Lamrim and Nyingmapa's Longchenpa's Simyi Nyeso and Kagyupa's Tapo Tarkyen, the liberation, ornament of liberation by Tapowa. So, in a sense, the way of teaching this Lamrim sort of more or less same, and the format is same, and they are all based on Atisha's Lamb of the Path text, the original text of Lamrim composed by Atisha. So the text here. So the text reads: this teaching is the here the Pawanka is referring to his teacher Jambe Rinpoche, Tapo Jambe Rinpoche, a great master. So he says, "My teacher." That's what he's Jambe Rinpoche is what he's referring to. So now the text says, now my teacher's own practical method consists of a series of topics that are based primarily on the swift path. The scholars, and this is how I shall present these to the assembly. So Atisha is generally a disciple of Nalanja masters like. But he's actually mainly a master from Brikramalasha University, not really Nalanda. But according to one saying, he did went to Nalanda also at one time and studied there for a short time. And according to his way of teaching, Atisha's way of teaching, according to Brikramalashila's tradition, it's important. They emphasize on teaching the Lamrim through the three format, telling, finding the so. So mainly emphasize on first showing that the Sheje Chue Tapa means the teaching that is going to be taught is a pure lineage and which is based on sort of unbiased analysis. So according to this teaching, according to this lineage, the ultimate way of proving the authenticity of the Buddha's teaching is through logic and reasoning. In China, as I said before, Okay. So in the Chinese tradition, they follow the Samdhin Nirmochana Sutra, which is actually a sutra expounding on the Yogacara school of thought. So their way of their way of sort of explaining the sutras is they just sort of rely on one sutra only and then try to interpret the Buddha's thought. So whereas Tsongkhapa says that it's not enough one should not just rely on one viewpoint, one sutra, and then try to say, okay, like it's like picking up one piece of grain and then say, all grains are like this. That's a totally wrong sort of approach. Tsongkhapa's approach is that he looks at sort of diverse teachings, sutras, and approaches, and the Brahmala. So Brahmala, just as we say, we depend on the four way. So for here he's on his. The Nalanda tradition and the Brahmala tradition have a different way of teaching Lamrim, or rather, whereas the this. So in the Adisha's tradition, which is based on the Brahmala tradition, the first it depends on showing the quality of the Buddha, the teacher, next the Dharma, and like that. Whereas according to the Nalanda tradition, first the quality of the teaching is explained, and then the teacher, like that. So here the text says the scholars of Nalanda Monastery used to say that it was important to teach the three purities before giving a teaching: the purity of the master's oral teaching, the purity of the mind stream, the disciple, and the purity of the Dharma being presented. The scholars of Brahmala Shila, in their introduction, used to discuss the greatness of the author, the greatness of the Dharma, and the way to explain and listen to that teaching. I shall follow this later tradition. So His Holiness said here, Adisha follows the Vikramala Shila tradition, as he's from Vikramala Shila. The discourse on the stages of the path to enlightenment has four major parts: the greatness of the authors, given in order to show that the teaching has an immaculate source; number two, the greatness of the Dharma, given to increase one's faith in the instruction; three, the right way to teach and listen to this Dharma with these two greatnesses; four, the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions. These four teachings are found in Tsongkhapa's great stages of the path. No matter which Lamrim is being presented, the easy path and the swift path, and so on, and no matter how much detail it is being given in, the oral tradition says you must start with these headings, otherwise people will not develop enough conviction. The greatness of the next section, the title of the next session is "The Greatness of the Authors, given to show the teaching has an immaculate source." So first, this text is going to this Lamrim called "Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand" will explain the quality of the author, which is the Buddha. As I said, not the Adisha Dipamkara Shirigyanas is the source of the Lamrim tradition. So Adisha's life story will be explained in brief in this text. Adisha's birthplace is in present-day Bangladesh. So the text reads, "As I said yesterday, according to the tradition of Indian scholars, Dharma you are to practice must be one taught by the Buddha, proven by the Pandits, and utilized in the meditation of great and powerful adepts to produce realizations and insights in the mind streams." It says that His Holiness says that in the text it says that Adisha's family are royals, they're kings, and they that in the Lamrim, there's it says that Adisha's father, and who was a royal king, and they sort of power and greatness was as great as the Chinese Donghun royal family. And Jangchup Lamrim has said that this is because Tibetan masters don't know the Chinese language. Donghun just basically means east. Dong means east. It doesn't mean that the word Donghun itself doesn't mean show that the king is great or something like that. So he's honest that this is just trivial. It's not that important. The text reads, on our part, to trace a river back to its sources, you need to go right back to the snow line. So too must you trace the Dharma back to the Buddha, our teacher. If I had but the time and knew enough to discuss this in detail, I would take the Buddha as my starting point and give the biographies of all the lineage gurus, telling how they made use of this very path to attain their high status. But I do not have enough time for such an extraordinary, lengthy discussion. I shall only tell you a little of this. Next section is Pavonka. The title of the next section is Pavonka Dojichang. Then told us a little of how they came to be two lineages from the Buddha down to Adisha, and how Adisha combined the two into one stream. He continued. Okay, the text starts. Adisha rode the lamb on the path to enlightenment in Tibet. The term Lamrim came later. The root text for the subject matter in all teachings such as the Lamrim, the Supreme Path, the great teachings and so on, in his masterpiece, The Lamb on the Path. Thus Adisha becomes the virtual author of them all. Even great Tsongkhapa wrote, the author of this is really Adisha, so I really ought to give you a detailed life history of Adisha, but I have time only for a short version. This has three headings. One, how he was born to one of the highest families. Two, how he attained his good qualities in that very rebirth. Three, the things he did to further the doctrine after gaining these qualities. Next section, the title is How Adisha was born to one of the highest families. Text continues. Adisha was born in the celebrated land of eastern India known as Bengal, in a large city in and around which there were 100,000 households, and he had 35,000 servants. His father's palace was called the Palace of Golden Victory Banners. It had the word Tuku was not there in India, but even in India, there used to be this notion that such and such person was sort of a reincarnation of a previous master. This was there even in the Hindu tradition, but in Tibetan tradition, the word Tugu came. So Tugu and Lama sort of became interchangeable, and it was first started by Gamabhat Tusumkebhat. He made a very clear prophecy of his next reincarnation, and then the next Gamabhat was born, recognized on the basis of that prophecy. So, and then since then, this tradition started, and following that, many other masters also had similar powers, and more Tukus came. But then, slowly, gradually, we had too many of them, many. But then, it is one High Lama said that it's great that we have so many lamas and tukus, but when we see that some lamas and some reincarnation tukus acts, disgracingly, then it's very disappointing and sad. So now, regarding Dalai Lama's reincarnation, the present Chinese government seems to be more concerned about his reincarnation than myself. I have said since 1960s that whether the Dalai Lama office is needed or not will be decided by determined by the Tibetan people. If they think there's need for it, they will preserve it. If they think it's not needed anymore, they will not preserve it. So in the recent times, some people are now talking about raising this issue, and I jokingly tell them that I am the 14th Dalai Lama. I have. So now I said that the 14th Dalai Lama is someone loved by many people. So sort of kind of has a good reputation. So it's better to conclude the Dalai Lama lineage when it is loved and respected. It's not good if another Dalai Lama comes and does disgraceful things and spoils the sort of the name of the Dalai Lama. Then it will be a very unfortunate thing. Just recently in Rome, some people asked me about this. I said that the Chinese government, before taking concern about Dalai Lama's reincarnation, first they should find the reincarnation of Deng Xiaoping and then Mao Zedong, and then it would be befitting to be concerned about Dalai Lama's reincarnation. Otherwise, it's very awkward or very strange for a regime who doesn't believe in religion, life after death, to be concerned about reincarnation of Dalai Lama. For example, many Chinese emperors were Tibetan Buddhist, and received teachings from Tibetan master like Jangchup Lamrim, the third Dalai Lama, Sonam Gyatso, like that. So this is just an sort of a conversation on the side. So it is important for spiritual masters to be Kejun Sangsum, scholar, practitioner, and good-natured. So that was what Atisha was like. So not only lamas, even all Tibetan people, men and women, I emphasize, should be like that. Intelligent, learned, good-natured, and moral people. If we can be like that, so this is not we should understand that it is not saying those who are sort of virtuous should be like that so that the rest of the people can praise them. But this is rather everyone should try to be like that. That is, in other words, you can just simply say be learned, moral, and good-natured. In Ketu Rinpoche's in one of his compositions, he has said that pure view means Gelugpa's doesn't mean Gelugpa should not when teaching like let's say Pure view doesn't. So here His Holiness is talking about what is pure view and what is mixing views of different schools. So which is regarded as an incorrect something which should not be done. What that means is when Hidurim, which is, for example, what that means is when you are teaching Gelugpa view, one should not use that while you are allowed to teach Sakya view and Nyingma view. There's no harm in that, but you should not mix the terms. The terms have their own unique meanings, and each one term should not be used to explain the meaning of the views of all schools. So that's the meaning of keeping the pure view pure. For example, how to keep the Gelugpa view pure. For example, Fifth Dalai Lama, for example, Pawangka, as far as Pawangka is concerned, Tejana Rinpoche himself told me that when he was small, Pawangka was at one time staying at the Chupsang Hermitage, and he was doing a retreat of Dandi Yangsang. And he saw Pawangka making small pills, red pills. And Pawangka told Tejana Rinpoche, this is a pill to do some ritual of the Damding Yangsang, which is a Nyingma practice deity. And later on, Pawangka even considered receiving the teaching of Deju Popsang, which is a Nyingma tradition. But then, following that, he had some kind of interaction with the Shukden deity, and then he couldn't go ahead with that. So in his upper part of his life, he was sort of a non-sectarian practice, and His Holiness 13th Dalai Lama was very, very kind to him. But in his second half of his life, his viewpoint changed, and he practiced non-sectarianism, and 13th Dalai Lama became very distant from him, like that. So, so here when it says that the text is Pawangka is saying it is very important that Gelugpa view is preserved in a pure form. So pure form, we should know, doesn't mean you are not allowed to learn the views of other schools and or even teach them. But rather it means the terminology had their unique meanings, and one should not use the Gelugpa terminology to explain the view of Dzogchen, and Dzogchen terminologies to explain the view of the Gelugpa or Sakya, or like that. So that's the point. So now the text is talking about how Adisha felt like renouncing the world and practicing Dharma. Age 16. Let us, according to Adisha's biography, it looks like Adisha was a vegetarian, and he didn't take non-veg food. So And I think here we are here. Okay, here. He met Avadutipa, who told him, "Go back to your father's kingdom today. Look into the drawbacks of a layman's way of life." And so he returned home, much to the delight of his parents. "Where have you been, Chandragarbha?" they asked. "Are you weary? Are you sad? How good it is you have returned." He replied, "I've been in search of a guru, the sage's place of refuge. I've been to mountain caves and empty places in search. No matter where I went, I saw the drawbacks of samsara. Whoever I befriended told me of the drawbacks of samsara. No matter what I do, dissatisfied I am, set me free and I shall return to the Dharma." His parents told him that if samsara made him so unhappy, he should take up his royal duties. Then he should make offerings to the three jewels, make donations to the poor, build temples, invite sangha, and so on. Then he would be completely happy. Adisha said, I've seen much of samsara. He replied, "I am not even minutely attached to the trappings of royal life. A golden palace is no different from a prison. Queens are no different from the daughters of Mara. The three sweet substances are no different from dark meat, pus, and blood. There is not the slightest difference between the beauty of wearing silks and jewels and donning a filthy blanket in a cemetery. I shall go into the forest to meditate. Today give me a little meat, milk, honey, and sugar cane. I will go to Venerable Avaduti." This was the gist of the song sung to his parents. His mother and father gave him permission to do so as he wished, and he set out for the forest with 1,000 horsemen. He became a follower of Avadutipa, who initiated him into the development of bodhicitta. "Go to the temple of Krishnagiri, the Black Mountain," said Avadutipa, "where Shri Rahula Gupta lives. He too was once your guru." Guru Rahula happened to be giving a tantric teaching when he saw the prince coming, and although he knew that Isha had come in quest of Dharma, he hurled a bolt of lightning at the prince to test him. Then Rahula went to the top of the mountain where there was a black Tritika stupa. His retinue of yogis asked the Guru who this person was. Rahula replied, "For 552 rebirths he has been nothing but scholarly pundits. At present he is heir to the Bengali Dharma king, Kalyana Shiri. He is unattached to the royal life and wishes to take up ascetic practices." Everyone was astonished. They stood up and welcomed him. As soon as he saw the Guru, Adisha said, "Holy Guru, hear me. I have left my home and wish to achieve liberation, but I have been born to a famous family, and am in danger of being bound to Bengal. I have devoted myself to Jitari, Bodhibhadra, Vidya Kokila, and Avadutipa. Gurus have psychic powers, yet even now I am not free of my royal obligations. I have now been sent to you, O Guru. Initiate me into the Mahayana and the development of bodhicitta. May I be free of these bonds." The Guru responded by happily giving the initiation of Hey Vajra and all the instructions to the prince. Alone for 13 days, he was given the secret name Janana Guhya Vajra. Rahula then addressed 88 terrifying and naked yogis and yoginis. "Follow him back to Bengal. Change the mind of the king, his father. When he is released from royal duties, take him back to his Guru and Avadutipa." The prince now dressed himself as Heruka, and when he approached the palace grounds, everyone who saw him recognized him and became afraid. He wandered aimlessly for 3 months, behaving like a madman. The yogins ran and jumped about. Everyone saw that he was set and abandoned his kingdom, and they could not hold back their tears. His father was the most affected one and said, "Alas, my son, at your most excellent birth, I saw wondrous signs and thought you would pursue your royal duties. My faculties revived with this happy thought. What then has your forest retreat done to your mind?" The prince replied, "What say you? If I pursued duties royal, I could, father, be with you for this momentary life. But father wouldn't know the sun in all rebirths to come. How very wrong, were no benefits to be had. If I forego the great demands of royal life and practice the sure path to liberation and enlightenment, we shall be together happily in all future lives. Therefore grant me this opportunity." His mother said, What's the use when this child is so determined? Karma is the foremost thing that throws us to all rebirths. O Holy One, practice Dharma you think best. Make prayers that we will be together always in my future lives. And she gave him permission. The prince yogis and yoginis left at first light for the forest hermitage of Guru Avadhudipa. The Swatantrik school of thought text Cheda Shizu Chamu. It was not in Tibetan. It was there in Chinese version, and I got one version, Chinese version, when I was in Tibet, and it was translated by Tongbu Rinpoche. And then after the translation was sort of many of the chapters were translated, and then after I came to India, I sort of put them together, and one chapter was missing. And now, recently, one Geshe-la living in Taiwan completed that remaining chapter, and now it's all in Tibetan. And she gave him permission. The prince yogis and yoginis left at first light for the forest hermitage of Guru Avadhudipa, where he studied the Dharma of the Madhyamaka school. Atisha was taught the subtleties of the law of cause and effect, and from the age of 21 to 29, emulated Avadhudipa. In short, he contemplated and meditated on everything he studied. The Blue Book of Spells says he followed Avadhudipa for seven years. Atisha could have been a king whose splendor would have equaled the Chinese emperor Li Shimin. 100,000 households were tenants of the king's palace with its victory banners, 25,000 bathing pools, 720 pleasure groves, and 56,000 palm trees. He could have had 3,500,000 subjects. The palace was surrounded by 7 walls interconnected by 363 bridges. It had 25,000 golden victory banners, and the central palace had 13 pagodas. But great Atisha gave himself out of Dharma and rid himself of these unmatched trappings of princely power as one spits on the dust. Our teacher, the Buddha, did the same. Although he held the power of a universal emperor in the palm of his hand, he forsook it to become ordained. Thus, you must avidly read their biographies. If someone were now to say, give up your vows and you'll be appointed governor of a district, we would do it without hesitation. That just shows the extent of our resolve. It is hard for us to even to give up the things in our poky little room, let alone the power of a prince. Contrast this with great Atisha, who gave up his royal position, treating it like spittle left in the dust, and who for 7 years depended mainly on Avadhudipa. He also studied the Vajrayana under many other gurus who too were endowed with psychic powers. He became a scholar in all the classic and in every instructions. A place. Atisha once traveled to Indonesia, probably somewhere in Java. This is what the text is talking about right now. He became a scholar in all the classics and every instruction. Once the thought came to him, I am well versed in the secret tantras, but he lost his pride when some Dakinis showed him in a dream, and many showed him in a dream many volumes on tantra he had never seen before. When he thought, I shall gain the supreme psychic powers of the Mahamudra in this lifetime by engaging in tantric behavior, that is taking on a consort, Guru Rahula Gupta came to him by miraculously passing through a wall. What, said the Guru, where are you going? Forgetting sentient beings? Get ordained. It will benefit the teachings and many sentient beings. Then Sri Kheruka appeared in space before Atisha and made a similar appeal. Our teacher Shakyamuni, the master of sages, the Lord Maitreya, also in Atisha's dream asked him to get ordained. He took his full ordination from Shila Raksha and out of the Mahasanghika subsect. Shila Raksha, an abbot of the Mahasangika subsect, who had achieved the patience stage of the path of preparation. Atisha was ordained at the age of 29. Atisha depended on 157 gurus. He studied all the sciences, sutras, tantras, along with their oral instructions. He made a particular study of all the key points of the four divisions of transmissions of Vinaya under Guru Dhammarakshita, as well as a huge text that covers in some 800 cantos the 7 divisions of the Abhidharma metaphysics, called the Great Discussion of the Particulars, Chadashivijama, which is called Chadashivijama in Tibetan, which His Holiness was talking about just a while ago. He listened to this teaching for 12 years and studied thoroughly because he knew all the subtleties and unconfused differences of the practice of the 18 sub-schools of the Vaibhashik school on such topics as taking alms or what water is fit to drink. He became the crowning jewel of all 18 of these Indian sub-schools. But although he received and practiced all the Dharma on Sutra and Tantra to be found in India at that time, he continued to wonder which path was the swiftest to enlightenment. Rahula Gupta, who was living in a cave on Mount Krishnagiri, knew this through his clairvoyance. He went to Atisha and said, What good is it merely to have the visions of tutelary deities, to manifest many sects of deities in their mandalas, to achieve many of the common psychic powers, or to have single-pointed concentration as firm as a mountain chain? Train your mind with love and bodhicitta. Thousand-Nama Avalokiteshvara is the deity of compassion. Take him as your tutelary deity and pledge yourself to work for the sake of sentient beings. Still samsara is emptied. One day Atisha was walking around the Vajra seat of enlightenment at Bodh Gaya. While on the circumambulation path, it seemed he witnessed a conversation between two statues. Another time, two girls who had transcended the human body were having, it seemed, a conversation in the southern sky over Bodh Gaya. In what Dharma should someone who desires swift and complete enlightenment train? Asked one girl. The other replied, train in bodhicitta. Then one told the other of a noble method for training in that mind. He stopped circumambulating in order to listen and took to heart, like one vessel receiving all the contents of another. One time he was standing by this stone fence that Acharya Nagarjuna had built. There was an old woman and a girl. Anyone who desires complete enlightenment quickly, said the woman to the girl, should train in bodhicitta. The Vinaya tradition that is there in our Tibetan tradition is Mul Sarvastivadin tradition, whereas Adisha belongs to the Pelten Depa, is another tradition. And when he came to Tibet, he considered introducing his own Vinaya lineage in Tibet at one point, but then his disciple Upasika Domtempa informed Choje that he should not do that because this Mulsarvastivadin tradition was introduced in Tibet by Shantarakshita after sort of discussion with the king, Tison Tenzin. So that has become a standard tradition in Tibet, and he should not introduce a new tradition. So in reply, Adisha said, now I don't even have power to give my Vinaya lineage to my disciples in Tibet. In Vinaya tradition, there is no mention about masters wearing hats, but here in this biography about Adisha, here it says that Adisha wore a hat to subdue his arrogance. So what about His Holiness seeing the Tibetans wearing this pointed hat, the monks, is that to show Tibetans how the Lama is very arrogant? His Holiness is just playing. They're asking some of the cautious Lamas in the front. Then one told the other of a noble method for. So His Holiness is here. In these lines, there's a lot of formality. Then one told the other of a novel method for training in that mind. He stopped circumambulating in order to listen and took to. Okay, this I finished. A statue of the Buddha under a balcony of the great temple at Bodh Gaya once spoke to Adisha while he was circumambulating. "O mendicant," it said, "if you wish to achieve complete and perfect enlightenment soon, train yourself with love, compassion, and bodhicitta." Once, while he made a circuit around a small stone-walled cell in an ivory statue, Buddha Shakyamuni said to him, "O yogi, train in bodhicitta if you want a true and complete enlightenment soon." Thus, Adisha developed more bodhicitta than he had ever done before, and in order to fully increase and develop the bodhicitta he already possessed, he wondered, who holds a complete set of instruction on this? He made inquiries and discovered that the great Suvarna Dipa Guru was famous for being a master of bodhicitta. Adisha made plans to go to Suvarna Dipa in Indonesia in order to receive the complete instruction on bodhicitta at the feet of the great Suvarna Dipa Guru. He traveled the ocean for 13 months in a boat with some traders who were going there on business and knew the way. Kamadeva, the powerful demon god of lust, could not bear to see the Buddha's teaching spread, and to hinder Adisha's bodhicitta, made the boat turn around by blowing up a headwind. Then he blocked the boat's passage with an enormous sea monster the size of a mountain, hurled lightning bolts from the sky, and so on. This caused much havoc. And Pandit Siddhigarbha fervently implored Adisha to use his wrathful powers. Adisha entered into the samadhi of Red Yamantaka and subdued the demon herds. And gradually his body made its way to Indonesia. Adisha had already become a great scholar and adept. As we have said, when only 18 months old, he had, without any prompting, spoken words that proved he was already conversant with bodhicitta, and yet he willingly underwent these hardships to reach Indonesia, which must convince us that nothing is more fundamental in the Mahayana than precious bodhicitta. Adisha spent 13 months on this journey, and he never took off his robes, the sign of ordination. He did not travel as we do, changing clothes outside of the monastery. When monks nowadays go on pilgrimage, supposedly for the sake of benefit of the teaching, they put on only lay clothes. Since the 10th century, Tibet split up into splinter states. But in the 7th, 8th, 9th, some American historians, by researching on Chinese sources, are saying that for about 3 centuries, in Asia there were three emperors: Chinese emperor, Tibetan emperor, and Mongolian emperor. The Chinese emperor emphasized on political power, and the Mongolian emperor emphasized, or rather sort of specialized in military power, and Tibetan emperor focused on religious power. I went to China in 1954. I went to, and 55 I came back to Tibet. And at Xikang, on the way at Xikang, Tarzido, there was a major earthquake, and I stayed there for some time. for a few days. One night, and also on the way I stopped by at Xi'an, which was the ancient Chinese capital. The Buddha statue, which is now in Lhasa, which originally came from China, actually came from that city, Xi'an, because the Chinese capital was there at that time, and the Chinese Wenqin Guangzhou, the Chinese princess, brought it to Tibet from there. So one day the Chinese took us for sort of sightseeing around the city. One Chinese official known as Fusitang took us he was one of the deputy leaders in that Chinese state, and he told us at that time that during the Chinese Tibetan Empire period, Tibetan forces reached up to this city, and at that time the Chinese emperor had to run away, had to flee the city, and from Xi'an. And one Korean Korean king, also, according to one saying, faced some difficulty, difficulty, and then the Tibetan emperor sent forces to help him. So what this shows is at that time the Tibetan empire was very powerful. But during the time of Adisha, Tibet had already split it up into fragments. And Dromtempa, Adisha's disciple at that time, mentions about population count of Tibet at that time, and Tibetans population at that time is said to be about 10 million. But now, so since then the Tibetan population declined. And recently I met one person, probably a Chinese man. He said that in central Tibet there's a lot of practice of polygamy, maybe for the sake for financial reasons, like two or three brothers marrying to one wife. This greatly harmed Tibetan population. That's what this guy said. And one German artist told me also, he went to Israel, and one woman had 9 children. So he told me that you Tibetans also should bear more children. Around the 10th century, Tibetan population said to be about 10 million, which means that before that, during the Empire period, Tibetan population was much greater. So since the Langtama period, Tibet split it up, and there was no central power, and Tibet became fragments. And the Kham and Amdo is fragmented away. So a small a very Tibetan dynasty central power continued to survive, but in a very, very weak way. So as far as Gomrim Parpa, the Gomrim was composed by Kamalashila, who was a disciple of Shantarakshita, requested by Shige Tuzon, a great powerful king, whereas Lamrim Adisha was Lamrim was composed by Adisha at the request of a Ngari, king of Ngari, a very small king, but who was a descendant of the Tibetan Empire, Tibetan emperor. So this is what these texts are saying. So the things I think His Holiness is right now on this title. The title is the things he did to further the doctrine after gaining these qualities. How he did this in India and how he did this in Tibet. Right now, it's how did this in Tibet. How he did this in Tibet. His Holiness said that one. His Holiness is just telling a joke. One Lama, I think, Shotoyuketu asked one monk, "What do you know about Dharma?" The monk said, "I don't know anything. I just attained liberation." So that's kind of a funny statement because if you have attained liberation, it's very high. But that monk, what that monk is, he had just become monk. He renounced, household life, and that is what he meant when he said he just attained liberation. So I'll read out this section on how he did this in Tibet. The teachings first promulgated in Tibet had by this time died out. The later dissemination of the teachings gradually gaining momentum, but some people concentrated on the Vinaya and disregarded Tantra. Others did just the opposite. Sutra and Tantra had become as opposite as hot and cold. Many well-known Pandits came to Tibet from India, lured by the prospect of gold. They deceived the people of Tibet with many evil mantras and tantric sects. And it had become most difficult for the pure teachings of the victorious one to spread. The Tibetan king Lama Yeshihu was not happy about this, and in order to promulgate pure teaching, he sent 21 bright Tibetan students to India to bring back Pandits who would be more beneficial to Tibet. But all but 2 of them died. The senior translator Rinchen Sangpo and the junior translator Legden Sherab both became steeped in Dharma, but still were unable to bring Atisha back with them. When they returned to Tibet, they had an audience with the king on how to harmonize the Sutra and Tantra with the practices and beliefs of the Indian scholars, of all the Indian scholars. There is no other Pandit who can benefit Tibet, they said. In Vikramala Shila, there lives a monk who left behind royal birth for monastic life. His name is Dibamkara Shirijana. If you invite him, it is certain to benefit Tibet. They said that all the other Pandits agreed on this. Their speech settled the king's doubts, but more importantly, he developed strong and unconquerable faith in Atishas merely through hearing his name. He sent Gyatsun Singh together with 8 others to bring Atisha back. They took with them much gold but failed. The Dharma king himself went in search of more gold to help bring the Pandit back. The Khan of Karlo, knew that the king was acting to further the doctrine, so he captured Yeshihu and threatened him with death if he did not abandon his teaching. The king was thrown into prison. His paternal nephew, Jangchup, went there in an attempt to free his uncle, only to be told by the Khan of Karlo, "You can either abandon your plan to bring the Pandit and become my vassals, or you can bring me the king's weight in gold. Either way, I shall set him free." Changju promised to hand over the gold. He offered the Khan the 200 ounces in gold he had with him, but the Khan would have none of it. Eventually, he brought the Khan the weight of the king's body in gold, but minus the head. The Kalok Khan was not interested. I want the head and all, he said. Changju did not have the means for any more gold. Instead, he went to the gate of Yishihu's prison. Uncle, he cried, you have been most kind. You are a victim of you are a victim of your past actions. If I wage war against this man to defeat him, very many warlike people will perish, and I fear they will be reborn in the lower realms. I was told by this fellow not to invite the Pandit, but instead become his vessel. But if we abandon the Dharma, we'll have given in to this sinful king. I think it is better for you to remain true to the Dharma. He told me he wanted your weight in gold. I have been searching for gold, but have only found enough to equal your body without the head. This did not satisfy me, and now I shall go to find the rest. I shall return with the ransom. Until then, you must think on your past karma, petition the 3 jewels, and above all, take courage and create merit. His uncle laughed and said, I thought you were just a spoiled child who gorged on rich food, unable to brave any difficulties or display any courage. Now I feel you can uphold the tradition of our forefathers when I die. You have acted well. This makes me content. I thought it would be wrong for me to die without having established the oldest rule of Dharma in Tibet. I'm old, and if I were not to die now, I would live only another 10 years. If I give away so much gold just for that, it would shame the 3 jewels. In my past lives, in beginningless samsara, I have not once died for the Dharma. Do not then give this Khan so much as a speck of gold. How excellent for me to die for the Dharma. If it was such a mighty task to find a gold for just me, where could we find gold for my head? Take all the gold to India. Do all you can to bring Adisha to Tibet, to back. If he will see you, give him my message. I gave up my life to the Karlok king for the Buddha's teaching. And Buddha's teaching and your own. Look after me with your compassion for the rest of my lives. For my foremost thought was for you to come to Tibet. I did this so that the Buddha's teaching could spread in Tibet. His Holiness is referring to a statement by Vasubandhu. His Holiness says this verse should be, sort of put up on, inscribed on walls, like placards around the buildings. I did this so you therefore should do only as I ask. Bless me so that we definitely meet in my future lives. Nephew, forget about me. Think of the Buddha's teaching. The uncle was in a weak state and the sound of his voice was most piteous. Yet Changchu could well believe that his uncle had the courage to think only about the saint beings of Tibet and of the Buddha's teachings and of Atisha. He forced himself to leave his uncle, Prince Changchu's courage greatly increased, and he acted to fulfill his uncle's wishes completely. In Tibet, there were many people passing of numerous crude religions as standards. Some of these were the Red Acharya, the infamous blue skirt Pandit, and the 18 Americans of Artso. In order to defeat these people skillfully, King Changchu prayed to the 3 jewels for guidance as to which of his subjects would be the right person to bring Adisha. All the dice divinations and astrological calculations suggest Nakso, the translator. Nakso happened to be living in the gilded temple at Kongtang. The king summoned him to Ngari, but feared the translator would not promise to go to India. King Changchu therefore had Nakso sit on his very own royal throne to show his respect and praise his scholarship, ethics, and kind-heartedness. You must plead with Adisha, said the king. Tell him my forefathers and the past kings and ministers of state and established the Buddha's teaching here. It became the custom, flourished and spread. Now the Buddha's teachings are in a sorry state. A race of demons has taken over. All the scholars have passed away. Both I and my uncle are most saddened by this and have sent much gold and many men to India. But after such a great expenditure, both wealth and men, we still have not brought Adisha back. Our king could not bear this and went in search of gold. and an evil Khan imprisoned him. His Majesty gave his life. When we ignorant sentient beings of the remote land of Tibet have shown such courage, how could you be considered compassionate and an object of refuge for sentient beings? I have 1400 ounces of gold. Take them and place them in this Guru's hands. Tell him, our Tibet is like the city of hungry ghosts. Finding gold in our country is like looking for a single louse on a sheep. It is so hard to find. The gold you see here is the entire wealth of the people of Tibet. But if you, O protector, do not go to Tibet, it will show how little compassion you holy beings have. We would then never do anything to better ourselves. Nakso, you uphold the Vinaya. Tell Atisha our story in person. If he still refuses to explain the situation until he completely understands it. The king was crying so much that there were tears on his lap and on the table in front of him. Nakso, the translator, whose real name was Sujim Gyawa, had not done much traveling before and was not at all keen to go off to distant places. But he could not bring himself to say yes or no. We have a proverb. The one who sees a person crying will begin to cry himself. He knew full well that what the king was saying was quite true. Although he had never met Yeshiva before, he was aware that the uncle and his nephew had spent much in wealth and men, and the two of them had suffered greatly for the sake of Tibet, so that we could be happy. The power of the words of the king, a man of high rank, had deeply moved Nakso. He was speechless, his body was shaking, and his face was covered with tears. He was unable to look at the king's face. The king was asking, His Holiness is saying, Dromteba was born at a place called Tsagyema. The king was asking him to risk both life and limb, but Nakso was not attached to any of this life's happiness, and so he said he would go. The king's 7 ministers carried the 1400 ounces of gold as they saw him off on the road to India. The king accompanied him for a great distance. Monk, you are doing this on my behalf, said the king. You are risking life and limb, and with great perseverance are now traveling to places that will create much hardship for you. When you return, I will repay your kindness. The king went back a little way. Then he said, petition the great compassionate one, our Lokiteshvara, while you are journeying. When Nakso, the translator, and his pretty party reached the kingdom of Nepal, they met a tall man who said, I think you are going to faraway places on a great mission. You will succeed in your mission if you repeat this while you travel. Homage to three jewels. May the holy Dharma. May the holy Dharma, the source of the Buddhas of the three times, spread to the land of snow. So say this as you go, then there will be no misfortune. They asked him who he was. Eventually you will come to know who I am, he said. There were also many other emanations of Dromtenpa, soon to be Atisha's chief disciples. So this tall man, His Holiness was saying, this tall man who appeared on the way was an emanation of Dromtenpa, who would later on become Atisha's disciple. These removed the many dangers that threatened Nakso and his party on the road. At last they arrived at the gate of Vikamala Shila. There was a parapet over the gate, and Gyatsen Singh, because he could understand Tibetan, called down to them from a cleft in the parapet, Tibetan sirs, where have you come from? We have come from Upper Ngari, they answered. There's a young boy, our gatekeeper. Leave all your things with him. Have a good night's sleep in some shelter. The gate will be opened just after first light. They gave their gold to the youthful gatekeeper, who put it in an inner room. Trust me as you would your best friend, he said. Don't worry, sleep well. They thought that the small child saying such things could not be an ordinary person. This set their minds at rest. Next morning, as soon as the gate was opened, a young child appeared. He wore a pointed head and was dressed like a Tibetan, complete with 2 layers of wooden clothes and carrying a small wooden ball. Where have you Tibetans come from? The child asked. You seem to be none the worse for your journey. Nakso's party found it heartening to run into someone so fluently speaking the nomad dialect. We have come from the Upper Ngari, they said. We have had a smooth journey. What brings you here? Where are you going? I am also Tibetan, replied the child. We are going to Tibet. We Tibetans have very loose tongues. We are too naive. We don't know how to keep a secret. Important things must be done in secret. Gyatso Singh is saying, staying in the Tibetan quarters. Ask around and you will find it. And with that, he was gone in an instant. They entered a long, narrow lane, followed it, and came upon an old holy man with a bamboo walking stick. Where have you come from? He asked. What was so important to make you come? We have come from Upper Ngari, they replied. We have come to bring back the illustrious Atisha. Where is Gyatso Singh's house? The old holy man leaned on his stick and rolled his eyes. The child you met this morning spoke the truth. Tibetans can't keep their mouths shut. Even a Tibetan mute would tell all their deepest secrets to people lurking in valleys. How can you possibly hope to accomplish anything this way? It's a good thing you told me, but speak of this to no one but Atisha. I will show you Gyatso Singh's store. The old man made his way slowly, and yet Nakso could not keep up with him. Nakso found him waiting on the threshold of the Tibetan quarters. Great matters must be done slowly, said the old man. Make haste slowly. What you want lies far away, and you must climb a mountain step by step. This is his house. Nakso went inside and made an offering of gold to Gyatso Singh. The translator, Gyatso Singh, saw him and asked, where have you come from? He told his story in detail. It appears that you were once my disciple, Gyatso Singh said. And yet I do not recognize you. Tell no one you have come to invite Atisha. Say you have come to learn. There is an elder called Ratna Karashanti. He is very powerful here and is Atisha's master. He must not suspect you have what you intend to do. We shall now make him an offering of an ounce of gold. Tell him, we have come from Tibet. We have failed to invite any panthers. I have now come to study and ask you to assign us to a pandit. That is how to present your request. After that, be in a hurry and don't let things worry you. Just relax. When the time is right, we shall skillfully invite Atisha to Tibet. Nakso and Gyatso Singh went to see the elder Ratna Karashanti and presented him with the ounce of gold. Nakso spoke with him for some time, giving the agreed-on story. The elder then said, that is wonderful. The other pandits cannot subdue sentient beings. This is no exaggeration. The Buddha's teaching may have origin in India, but without Atisha, the merit of sentient beings here will decline. He also said many other things. For some time, it was very difficult for them to see Atisha. Just the same emanation of Avalokiteshvara had provided. Just the same emanation of relations to Avalokiteshvara had provided many auspicious opportunities for Atisha to travel to Tibet. Then a day came when there were no other Indian pandits or kings around us to suspect what was happening. Gyatso Singh told Nakso to come and took him to Atisha's room. They offered Atisha a walled mandala, 1 cubit high, surmounted by a gold piece, which was itself surrounded by small pieces of gold. Translator Gyatso Singh spoke for both of them. He told how the king of Tibet was a bodhisattva and how the Dharma had spread under the 3 Dharma Rajas, Songtsen Gampo, Tison Devze, and Trirepache. He told how the king Langtharma had persecuted the teachings and how the great Lama Gompa Ravse had managed to preserve the Sangha and increase its numbers. He spoke of the sacrifice of the king's uncle had made to bring Atisha to Tibet. He gave Changju her message and described the sort of perverted Dharma prevalent in Tibet. That the Bodhisattva king of Tibet, Gyatso Singh said, has sent this monk to invite you, O protector. Don't just talk of going next year. Look compassionately on Tibet. The Tibetan king is a bodhisattva, said Atisha. The 3 Dhammas Rajas were the emanations of bodhisattvas. Gompa Ravse was an emanation of a bodhisattva. Otherwise, how could he have rekindled the embers of the teaching? The kings of Tibet are bodhisattvas. It would be it would not be right to disobey the orders of a bodhisattva. I feel ashamed before this king. He has spent much wealth, and many men, you Tibetans, are in a piteous state, but I am responsible for the many keys of the temple of the monastery. I am now old. I have many offices to perform. I cannot hope to return from Tibet. Still, I shall investigate this matter. Keep your gold for the time being. Then he sent them away. Adisha then investigated whether it would benefit the Buddha's teaching if he, out of love for his potential Tibetan disciples, he went to Tibet. He also checked whether it would be a hindrance to his own lifespan. Avalokiteshvara, Aryatara, and so forth told him that it would prove most beneficial to sentient beings and the teachings if he went. Moreover, there would be much benefit resulting from a lay vow holder, upasaka, But if he did go, his life would be shortened. Adisha asked by how much. They told him he would live only to 92 if he did not go. He would live to 92 if he did not go, and if he did go, he would not reach 73, meaning that his life would be shortened by almost 20 years. At this point, His Honor said Adisha's nature is such that he has a very soft, tender heart. If for small matters, for a small thing, he would feel very tender and very moved. But if he did go, his life. Adisha asked, At this point, Adisha thought of all the benefits of going to Tibet, and if it means a shorter life, then so be it. He had developed such strength of purpose that he did not care for his own life at all. However, Adisha did not want to go to Tibet immediately because the Indian Sangha and their benefactors would say that India, the very fountainhead of the teachings, would go into decline. In order to prevent such talk, Adisha employed his skillful means. Instead of telling people he was going to Tibet, he said he was to go on an extensive tour to make offerings at Bodh Gaya and other great places of pilgrimage, traveling back and forth. Domtemba, being in the true sense a Dhamaraja, skillfully manifested in the forms of traders, and without anyone suspecting it, they took back to Tibet many holy statues of Manjuvara, a form of Guya Samaj, etc. The symbols of the bodies of the Buddha, as well as many scriptures, the symbols of the enlightened one's speech. Adisha asked the elder Ratnakara Shanti, if he would be permitted to go to Nepal and Tibet. There were many exceptional stupas and places of pilgrimage there, and he would be gone only as long as it would take to see them. The elder observed that Adisha seemed rather keen to go and that the Tibetans had been most determined to take him, so he allowed him to go for a short while. Now, so the translator had to promise to bring him back within 3 years. Then Adisha and his disciple left India for the kingdom of Nepal. The Tibetan king came with about 300 horsemen and gave a lavish welcome. We were told how the local people would instantly develop faith at the mere sight of him, and how their mind streams became subdued. The next section the title is Pabonga Dojichan also spoke in detail on the meeting between Adisha and the great translator Rinchen Sangpo. King Changju made this supplication to Adisha, telling how in the past the three Dhamarajas had endured hundreds of difficulties to establish the Buddhist teachings here in the northern land of snows, but Langdharma had persecuted the teachings. Changju's own forebears, the Dhamarajas of Ngari, had re-established the Buddhist teaching in Tibet without regard for their own lives, but now some people had taken to the Tantras and ignored the Vinaya. Others swore by the Vinaya and ignored the Tantras. The Sutras and the Tantras were held to be as opposite as hot and cold. People carried out their own fanciful practices and more to the point, Acharya red skirt and Acharya blue skirt taught doctrines of liberation through intercourse to the matted-haired and top-knotted practitioners of the old tantras. The teachings had declined so much that they were like meaningless babble. He went on in much detail, and his eyes filled with tears. Compassionate Adisha, he said, for now do not teach the profoundest and the most amazing of the dhammas of the law of cause. For now do not teach the profoundest and the most amazing of dhammas to your uncivilized disciples of Tibet. I ask you to teach instead the dharma of the law of cause and effect. Also may it please the protector and to compassionately teach some error-free yet easy to practice dharma, one that you would yourself practice, one that includes the whole path, would be beneficial to Tibetans in general and encompass the intent of the victorious one's scriptures, the sutras, the tantras, and the commentaries. Further, must one have the praktimoksha vows in order to be a candidate for the vows in the involvement form of bodhicitta? Can one be enlightened without the combinations of method and wisdom? Is one permitted to teach Tantra to one who has not obtained the initiation? Is one permitted to confer the actual wisdom initiation, where one gives the disciples a real counsel to vowed celibates? Is one permitted to perform the practice of secret Tantra with Tantric path without having already obtained the Vajramaster initiation? These were but some of the questions he asked. Adisha was highly pleased by this and so composed the Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment. In only 3 folios, this elucidates all the thinkings of the sutras and tantras. It begins. Most respectful homage to all the holy victors of the 3 times, to the dhammas, to the sangha. Requested by my noble disciple Jangchup, I shall light the lamb on the path to enlightenment. Adisha did not say my noble disciple Jangchup because he had received many offerings from him. Rather, it was because he was delighted with the way Jangchup had asked about Dharma. My own precious Guru told me Adisha would not have been at all pleased if he had asked, please give me a major empowerment or a minor initiation. The Lamb on the Path includes the answer to Jangchup's question. Soon after its appearance, the crude and perverse teachings in Tibet disappeared from whence they came. Adisha furthered the doctrine in the Upper Ngari area. But when the 3 years were nearly over, and because of his promise to the elder, Nakso, the translator, said, we must now return to India. Adisha appeared to consent, and so they went to Purang. But previously, Tara had told Adisha repeatedly it would be most beneficial for the teachers if you took on a great upasaka in Tibet. If you took on a great upasaka in Tibet. Now, she was repeatedly telling him the upasaka will soon be here. So Adisha was constantly on the lookout for him. My upasaka hasn't come, he said. How could Tara lie? One day, Domdemba turned up while Adisha was visiting a benefactor. Dom went to Adisha's room and was told that Adisha had gone to see his sponsor, but would now be on his way back. I can't wait one moment, said Domdemba. Dom Rinpoche, the sooner I meet my Mahayana spiritual guide, the better. I'm going to where he is. He left and met Adisha in an alley. Dom made full-length prostration and went up to Adisha, who put his hand on Dom's head while saying many auspicious things in Sanskrit. Adisha, while with his sponsor, has said, I need a portion of food for my upasaka. He was carrying food with him. Adisha was a strict vegetarian, and the meal he had been given that day consisted of barley dough steeped in ghee. Dom ate the barley dough, but saved the clarified butter, making a large butter lamb big enough to burn all night. He placed it by Adisha's pillow, and he is said to have placed similar butter lamps by his teacher's pillow every day without fail for the rest of Adisha's life. That night, Adisha gave Dom Rinpoche a major initiation and adopted him as his spiritual son. They set out from Purang and went to Kirong in the Mangye district, planning to pass through Nepal en route to India. But the way was blocked because a war had broken out. they could not go any further. At this point, Dom urged Adisha to go back to Tibet, while Naksu pleaded with him to travel on to India. The translator was frustrated because he could not travel back to India. Adisha said to him, "You should not worry so much. You have not done anything wrong, for you are unable to carry out your promise." This made the translator very happy. "Very well," he said, "let us return to Tibet." So Adisha decided to return to Tibet. The teaching approach of Lamrim and the three principles are slightly different. Lamzu is, in the three principles, first feeling averse to this world's pleasure, and then comes next life's pleasures. Whereas in the Lamrim, it's the other way around, or something like that. So Adisha has decided to return to Tibet. He could not go on to India because the road was blocked at this time. As a result of the Tibetan collective merit. Because the road was blocked at that time as a result of the Tibetans' collective merit. Because Adisha could not proceed, they sent a message to India saying Adisha has traveled back to Nepal because of the fighting on the way, so he could not return as the elder had ordered. This means that we have to return to Tibet for a while. Could you invite Adisha back when the travel dies down? Because it would be most helpful for sentient beings. Could you allow Adisha to remain in Tibet while he's there? He will write more treatises like the one enclosed. They sent Adisha's autographed copy of The Lamb on the Path along with much gold. His Honor says Lagdon Chemo is an outstanding piece of work by Tsongkhapa. He only said he will stop here for today. So just like ancient Tibetan kings and ancient Tibetan masters have strove, worked hard. So we should repay their kindness and don't disgrace them and disgrace ourselves. Oye, parlap ke yürüdüm ki cevabı var konu böyle şu cidra kemada kundosan o diye düşünüyorum. Da gideceğiz ağır diye Holiness and the monk Sangha is reciting the Lamrim prayer by Tsongkhapa.
Amen de Granavi, Yamdo, Josuga, Nese, Mogi, Jeba, Shene, Dega, Jazo, Woyon, Jeba, Gajo, Shene, Jendo, Najo, Lalu, Mungi, Seme, Nige, Jumbe, Tada, Jimmy, Yado, Jibe, Nada, Denje, Nibe, Lanje, Raji, Nibo, Jebe, Ninji, Mese, Jebe, Zona, Janzen, Zaven, Bella, Jodin, Nido, Nabin, Dumben, Yonzon, Bejon, Rawan, Sam, Lunde, Chese, Zonde, Gaden, Lajebe, Gezan, Yuan, Yudo, Tendan, Tinzi, Javze, Ravile, Jebe, Luzo, Longe, Yonda, Kawan, Jada, Dube, Jebo, Nan, Duzi, Gonde, Toshi, Yo, Donan, Gombo, Jere, Zawangi, Sijin, Jebe, Kangjin, Yonzo, Jajin, Melan, Kanzin, Ben, Zan, Dende, Cao,